Welcome back to Kamea Talks. Today, we have a guest I have been wanting to meet for a very long time. Back when I first started public speaking, I went to YouTube to find videos for inspiration, and he was one of the first people that showed up. Please welcome a storyteller, a project manager, and a coach, and the 2019 World Champion of Public Speaking, Beverly.
Thanks for having me, Kamea.
It is my pleasure. So, first, I want to start off pretty wide scale. And I want to talk about my generation because we are a generation apart. So, we got different experiences in our upbringing and what we have with communication today.
Right.
So, nowadays, everyone's on technology. We have shorter attention spans. We have new terms like brain rot. So, I want to ask you from your perspective, there's more people technically speaking, but I feel like fewer people are actually being heard. So,
Mm.
from your perspective, what do you think has changed with public speaking and what still matters in this world?
It's interesting that you asked this because I feel like this has been gradual and it hasn't been something that's been an automatic shift. For instance, we think about how people used to speak maybe 100 years ago, and it was very formal, it was very polished, it was very authoritative, and over time as more people got into the workforce and more people started to have more successful careers, for lack of a better way of saying it, I think more of the common people came into society. And as such, they started speaking more commonly. They're thinking, like, why do I need to speak so poetically when it's so much more efficient to say exactly what I mean in layman's terms? So I think over time we've got more efficient with our communication. It no longer needs to be as over polished or flowery. It now just needs to be practical and efficient. And I think that's even translated into how we've gotten into this age of technology where not only do we need to get people's attention and communicate with them, but we need to keep their attention. And it's very difficult to keep people's attention. So, what has happened is that we've become so efficient with the communication that, okay, it only takes 5 seconds for us to decide whether we want to give somebody the time of day or not. So it's interesting, but I think it's been a gradual progression. But technology has definitely, I think, made it we're more efficient, but I'm not sure it's for the better.
So, do you think we're better at expressing ourselves or we've just become louder in a sense because of technology?
I think we've I think we've gotten more knowledgeable. So we have more knowledge about the things that we say and how that can impact other people. I think overall we've had a lot more growth in communicating empathetically. But what I think we've also run into is this counterforce that says, like, no, the old way was great. Like, let's keep it everything the same. So we have these people who are more traditionalists in that sense, and then we have these people who are more, I hate to use the word, but progressive. And now, because you have these two sides that want to communicate different ways, there are a lot of people who fall in the middle that just say, I'll just play it as safe as possible so that I don't anger one side or the other. So I think we're more tentative, is what I would say. We're more tentative around our communication than we've ever been.
I agree with that. So, I'm sure you wrote all your speeches from scratch when you won 2019 and competed Toastmasters internationally. But nowadays, people can get speeches done in a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you, how do you think AI will and already has changed the ecosystem of public speaking in general?
I was talking with a former client of mine, and he was saying that with technology, one of his problems was that English was a second language, so he had to make sure that his speeches had proper grammar, that he could use the right words. So that was one thing. And when I was talking with him, he said that AI has gotten it to a point where that barrier for him of grammar has basically been eliminated. So now, as a coach, he wouldn't come to me seeking help with grammar or anything like that. That's a step that now we can skip, and we can get more so into the word choice. So I think that's something that AI has already started helping us with. So it can break down barriers. It can also break down barriers in terms of research and knowledge, because now it's so easy to find information and good quality information and have it properly formatted. Of course, we still need to remember we need to verify things, but it's a lot easier to get this information now. So not only can we research faster, we can turn it into a piece of content and communicate it faster than ever. So the expediency, that's something else that AI has greatly contributed to. Now, the downsides, I think we over rely on AI now, where there are people who will ask AI to do their research, but then they're also going to ask AI to verify and check. And instead of diving into these things themselves and learning about these topics with pen and paper in hand, for instance, I think those days are gone, and there may be a different way that we have to learn. I'm not sure that I don't know enough about the psychology of learning to understand whether it's possible or not. But I think that we are going to end up over relying on AI, and it will definitely become apparent as more people have less subject matter expertise of, yeah, I don't want to go too doom and gloom. I'll stop there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that it's already become, in a way, a bridge that we use to skip over those steps, because I know, especially with school nowadays, it's just everyday life. Everyone uses
Yeah,
ChatGPT, everyone uses artificial intelligence. So I think that it has really improved life, but also, in a way, can be a bit of a detriment to the things that we're doing every single day, because it's just substituting all of that work, all that
yeah,
research, all that effort we had to put in to do things. Now it's done in a couple of seconds. And I know from all my experience when I've competed, I'm pretty sure since I was competing post 2020, I'm sure a lot of these features were probably written by AI. So I'm just saying right there, I think it's great for ideas, but
yeah,
there is a way, there is a barrier that, there's a line you shouldn't cross when you completely remove that human aspect. And I know you've talked about before that whenever you competed, you like to focus less on trophies and more on growth.
yeah,
I know I'm a very goal and accolade oriented person myself, and I know a lot of other kids out there are as well. So I know I love achievement because it makes me feel like I'm moving towards a certain direction. Growth, on the other hand, is not as evident immediately. It's more gradual. So,
hmm
what do you truly mean by focusing less on those trophies and more on that growth?
yeah. When I started competing in 2012, that was the first year I competed. I was focused on that trophy. I was focused on the win. I was focused on the accolades that I was going to achieve. And I didn't get nearly as far as I wanted to. I think I lost in the, well, I don't think, I know. I lost in the second round out of six. And every year I would compete and try to win the trophy, win the trophy, win the trophy. It was only after I gotten more experience that I started to piece things together and realize that I was growing as a person over this time as well. And some of the most successful years was when I didn't necessarily have the goal of winning the trophy. And instead, there were other goals. For instance, I remember in 2014, my main goal was to get the ticket to Kuala Lumpur because the Toastmasters contest was going to be held there that time. So I wanted to go there and meet my friends and hang out with them. And there were three of us who said that we were going to do that. all three of us got to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia that year. So that was a motivating goal for me. Then in 2017, I remember I competed because in 2016 I had a I was not necessarily mad that I came second in 2016, but I felt that there was more that I could have given. I could have done something differently to make my performance better in my eyes. So 2017, my goal was really just to complete my speech and do as best as I possibly could with that speech so that I could be satisfied with win, lose, or draw. So those were reasons that went beyond the contest. And that's when I felt that I competed competed the best. And that's when I got the best results. So it made me realize that the true goal or the true mission that I should be focusing on is competing to grow as a person, especially because we can get so down on ourselves when we don't get a certain result. And that's how I was in 2018. And that's really what made me shift is that you have all of these good things going for you. You've grown so much. You've become a completely different person than when you first started competing. And yet you get so over emotional because of a piece of plastic. So that's when I really switched my mindset and started focusing on not winning trophies, not winning around, but rather I have a specific goal in every single round of the contest. And if I achieve that goal, win, lose, or draw, it was a success for me. And that's the mentality that I adopted in 2019, expecting that I was going to be competing for multiple years after. But that was the year that I won the World Championship of Public Speaking.
Man, Aaron, I absolutely love what you just said right there because I feel like when you're focusing on that growth, it almost gives you the benefit of both sides. When
Yeah,
you lose or draw, you still get you benefit from the experience and you can learn and move forward from there. And then let's say you do end up winning like you did in 2019, you get the benefit of that as well, but you also enjoyed it along the way and you aren't over obsessed about it. So I think that there really is a balance between the two, but by adopting that mindset, you really can achieve great things as well. And I know that sometimes I fall victim to being obsessed over those certain accolades or certain awards. First time competing, I ended up making it pretty far. I got into my own head and I overinflated how good I was when I was able to compete nationally in Canada, didn't place at all. So the next year, I was like, okay, maybe I should just really work on that growth within myself. And I ended up
mm,
winning first in Canada that next year. But I think it wasn't just because of that practice, it was because of the loss too. And I think
right,
there's a big advantage when you embrace that loss and those mistakes because you've talked about happy little accidents before and
right.
how you talked about the beginning of your 2016 speech, which is my personal favorite speech of all time that you have ever done, where that you had that super
Appreciate
long introduction, where that
that.
came from an accident where you were adjusting your mic and you were just like, you guys enjoyed that, didn't you? Something to that effect.
Yeah,
So I think that's pretty awesome. When you embrace those mistakes, they can be some of the greatest things that you gain. And I
absolutely.
know in that speech you dropped one of the best quotes I've heard, which is just because you say more, it doesn't mean people will remember what you say. You've always described yourself as a more introverted person. So I want to ask you that you describe yourself as an introvert, yet you've chosen to speak in front of thousands. So, firstly, what motivated you to pursue this field as an introvert? And where does this confidence stem from?
I'll answer the second part first. I believe the confidence comes from the experience. There are a lot of people who I feel are born confident or they're just nurtured in an environment where they're just taught to be confident in themselves at all times. And even if they aren't, they are taught how to fake it. Then there are people like me. There are people who regardless of what anybody says, this voice in the back of their mind says that no, I'm not worthy, no, I'm not good enough. Now, the thing with that is we tend to tie being an introvert to being antisocial or being afraid of people or having social anxiety. I think that a lot of people who are introverts are like that. They do also suffer from those things, but they're two different things. So introversion is all about where you get your energy, whether you get that energy from interacting with people or whether you get that energy from or restore that energy by being by yourself. So that's what being an introvert and an extrovert is about. Extroverts love attention and that's how they energize. Introverts like to be alone, that's how they re energize. Now, for me, when I was growing up, I made that excuse that I'm introverted, thinking that it was all of these other things too. So I went through my life just being put in these situations, and I hated these situations where I would have to be in front, where I would have to be the one taking responsibility, where I would have to be the one taking the lead. And those bad experiences just kept piling up. Then what really turned it around for me was just the realization that if I don't do something different, I'm going to be a bum living on the streets. I can't have that happen. So it started to become about survival for me. And in 2009, when I was about to graduate college, I realized that all of the job opportunities that I had before were gone, or the prospective jobs that I was going to have were gone. And then what shifted in me was that I saw one of the interviews from Warren Buffett saying public speaking is the number one skill. Then that's also a year after Barack Obama was on the campaign trail, and I saw his ability to speak, and I just was amazed by his ability to talk to people and achieve things through talking to people. And then I also had a person who was a president of the entire Toastmasters organization in 2005, who was a adjunct professor at my school. So all of these things kind of just aligned in the right way. And then that survival instinct kicking in made me realize that, okay, I need to stand out. Public speaking is the way that I'm going to choose to stand out. However, I'm terrified of it. So let me practice the speech for 24 hours before I have to give it. Like I literally practiced the speech for 24 hours straight. But after having a successful speech, I realized that I could do it. And again, to tie back into the question that I answered before, when I had that confidence, it just kept building after more and more experiences. Yes, there were setbacks, but I learned from them and I was able to correct myself afterwards. But as I kept having that experience, more and more confidence started to build as well.
Wow. I I always keep coming back to this one quote you said where you talked about the best action to fighting fear is exposure.
Yeah,
And I think at your level of public speaking, it's not talent. You said before you practice speech for 24 hours, which is insane. I thought I practiced a ton when I was giving my speeches, but that's crazy. So it's a lot
that's
of practice. You've talked about how public speaking is like a muscle you train, just like you would work out.
absolutely.
So I know I practiced a ton, not to that extent yet. I know in basketball, players like Kobe and Michael Jordan, they would practice almost to like the point of obsession.
Yeah.
What does your preparation really look like before you give those speeches, especially during that time when you were given
Mm.
those national speeches as well?
Oh, wow. That one, people have asked me how long do I practice or how many practices do I have for each speech. And it's always difficult for me to give them a straightforward answer because I would be one of those people that were just so obsessed where very rarely is it leaving my mind. For 8 years, the contest had my focus. Of course, there were times when I would have it on the back burner because there were other things going on or my contest season had ended earlier, etc. But I'm always thinking about different types of stories that I could use or different ways I can present. Even during the contest season, I'm always iterating, I'm always working on a speech, I'm always reliving in my mind, okay, when I delivered that line, how did people react? Was it the reaction that I wanted? Was it an unexpected reaction? How can I test this out again? So I'm just going through this scientific process of putting my speech together and enhancing my speech based off of the feedback that I've been getting. And then I'm also thinking about different things in terms of delivery and humor. I see something that inspires me that another comedian does, and I don't take their material, but maybe there's an inflection that they use, and I think to myself, okay, maybe that's a way that I can deliver this certain line, and maybe I can get a similar result. So that's all of what was going in my head for at least 8 years as I was going through the contest year after year. And to be honest, that's where the fun was. And I know it becomes cliche when you hear it from people like a LeBron or a Kobe, where you have to fall in love with the process. That is falling in love with the process, where it's just, oh man, I love thinking about constructing a speech. I love how a story comes together. I love thinking about character development within the story that you're telling. Even now, like I'm nerding out with this long answer, so I'm going to stop there, and hopefully that was
Oh,
that
it's
gave you
all good. I
enough
love
to
that.
answer
I
the
love I
question.
love all the things that you're saying. I I think in the past you've mentioned Eddie Murphy and different comedians. That made me think like
Yeah.
comedians really are really good communicators. They really are. What
Oh
do you
yeah.
think makes
They're the
really
best. Sorry, no. Yeah, they're the
wow?
best modern day public speakers, in my
What do
opinion.
you think makes comedians such good communicators?
I think because they're connected to humor and
Mhm.
joy. A comedian, at least a good comedian, should inspire people to laugh and not take things as seriously, which is one of the reasons why I think it's unfortunate that we've gotten into this weird situation where we have more scrutiny over comedians than we do politicians. But that's going in a whole different direction. But it also goes to show you how important people see comedians. So they have a lot of power. They're able to communicate. A lot of them talk to people just on the regular because they're always trying to test material in different ways. So they're going out and they're interacting with some of the people that you and I don't normally want to interact with. Like they're talking to the people at the bars that are just there to have a good time, don't want to hear anything, and will heckle them. So they've put in the reps. The best of them have, and I think a lot of people respect that hustle now that they know what goes into building comedy like that. And again, these are people who their primary mission is to make you feel an emotion that is positive. So I think that's what really gives a comedian their superpower, for better or worse.
Well said. I haven't really thought about it that way. I always think that one of the greatest skills that comedians have is also their ability to storytell. How
Oh yeah,
much do you think
absolutely.
storytelling has an impact on the way you communicate?
I mean, it's what drives our existence, I feel. So, regardless of where you are, you're going to have to generate some type of story because at the end of the day, you have to tell somebody what happened and you have to make sure that they remember what happened. And the majority of humans, I believe, are visual, or so they're usually visual. So, like if we have sight, we see various images. So we need to keep these things in mind. So now when people tell us a story, if they're able to evoke these images and spark our minds in that regard, it's a lot easier to communicate something. So storytelling to me was a necessity. So that's how we had to tell the stories to avoid the saber-toothed tiger. That's how we had to tell people why they shouldn't do certain things because they would tell stories about bad people getting you, blah blah blah. So storytelling has really driven our entire lives. Now we get to the modern day, and storytelling is something where it can be completely entertainment. So that's why we love our different television shows, because we love the story. But then we get to other things where if you have to go before a your board of directors, for instance, and you have to give a report. Well, you have to tell a story about why the company is doing so well, or why they should believe that the company is doing so well. So there's always a story. There's always a narrative that needs to be told, especially nowadays. So I think that storytelling just drives that for us, whether it's for survival or whether it's for entertainment. It drives up everything.
You've achieved something that very few people ever will: world champion of public speaking. But you've also spent a lot of time helping other people find their voice as well as a coach.
Mm,
So, when you coach speakers, how do you help them grow without turning them into smaller versions of Aaron? How do you develop
mm,
someone's communication skills while protecting their individuality as well?
nice. It can be tough. I remember in some of my earlier stints in coaching, I I would lapse into trying to drive the entire thing because okay, I want to make sure that this person is going to be successful. And in my mind, I'm thinking they're going to be successful by me pretty much writing their entire speech. And I was actually really glad that my client, we talked about the speech, and he said that I don't I appreciate you taking the work and really trying to do this, but this isn't a speech for me. And I that made me remember that I can be the one giving that speech. They have to be the one giving the speech. So after that, I started to really focus on okay, what are the things that really make my coachees stand out? So I try to talk to them. One thing that I'll do with them, I will ask them before every coaching session, I ask them to just tell me a story. So not something that they've polished or rehearsed. I just want them to tell me a story as if I'm sitting at the dinner table with them. And I want to see them in their most natural element. Now, when I was coaching somebody earlier this year, I really wanted him to focus on being more natural, being more of himself. And he English was his second language. So there was always this process that he had to run through. And what would come out was just something that's more robotic and more rehearsed. So I told him, okay, tell me a story, but tell it to me in Mandarin. So his native language. And a completely different body movements, completely different vibe as he presented that. So for me, I wanted to find a way that we could get more of his natural language speaking, body language and mannerisms into his English version because that was more him. So I always try to find okay, what in your presentation style makes you more you, and it's usually the thing that you're doing every day with the people that you love. And then what are some other ways that we can play with that? So there are probably other speakers that I could suggest that they look at, or people that are doing certain things where I want them to take a look at and see if they can incorporate that. Because not to say that they need to copy these people, but what they should be doing is taking things that they like and saying, that's something that I think I could do. Let me try it. And then they test it out and maybe it works and you incorporate that into your presentation style going forward. If it doesn't, move on to the next thing.
I love that because I've done a couple workshops with high school and middle school students as well. And one thing I noticed was whenever I'd give a piece of advice, it's almost as if they listened too well and start imitating the way I presented myself and the way I spoke. And I
Yeah,
don't want that to happen because I feel like one of the best things about public speaking is you get to share your own individual style and your own
yeah,
uniqueness through the way you talk and through the way you communicate. And I think that that's something you should foster and really take care of, especially as a young speaker, because the moment you get rid of that, you don't want to just fall into the trap of sounding like every single person in the world. that does public speaking. And I know there's a style
Yep.
from when I've talked to people who do like debate and all that type of stuff. There's like a style that they speak like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like there's a beauty to that individual style and sense of person that you develop through public speaking. And I think, especially with technology and social media nowadays, that's kind of being diluted. We're trying to be fit in with the crowd. We're trying to become very cohesive with everyone else. We want to keep that
Mm.
uniqueness. So, one of my closing questions for you is when you think about the next generation growing up online, what do you hope they learn and take away about communication?
That is best done in person. And this is coming from someone who is a stone cold introvert. I love my alone time. When we went into the pandemic, I thought that, oh, this is going to be great because I can just speak virtually. And then I started speaking virtually and I started speaking more virtually. And I realized that this was probably even more tiring than when I was speaking to them in person. And what I realized was that it was because it's not the same adrenaline rush as when I was speaking to them in person. And same for our everyday communication. I think when we get to a point where it's easier to talk to somebody through text message than it is to them in person, we have a interpersonal communication gap. And technology is not going to replace humans. So we need to find a way to be able to engage people without the machines. So I think your generation, I've been hearing that you really try to focus a lot more on meeting in person and creating like genuine bonds with friends and physically and in person. And I love that. And I think we need to get to doing that more. But we also need to incorporate that into the professional side as well. And I know a lot of people don't want to come back into the office and they rather work remote, but I think that there is a positive for interacting with people and talking with people face to face, getting a coffee, and just having those everyday human interactions, those everyday public speaking interactions.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that there's something about face to face communication that can't be replicated with technology. There's a human to human perspective that you can't replace. And I know I've taught online versus in person. I feel like you can just be so much more dynamic in person just with the way you teach as well. And there's so
Yeah,
much truth that you said today. One of the greatest things that I appreciate about you is I feel like you spoke very honestly and raw about your experience. Because truthfully, one of the greatest things about public speaking is being able to express yourself in an honest, genuine way. And I think that
absolutely.
even from my first time watching your speech back in your 2016 Toastmaster speech, when I first started doing public speaking, this was about 2.5 years ago. One of the greatest things that I
Yeah.
took away was your sincerity when you spoke. So, Aaron, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast for a little interview. It's one of the coolest things meeting one of those people that you were inspired by and really seeing them live up to that. You are an amazing speaker, man. And I appreciate everything you are doing for the public speaking and education all around. You really emphasize how public speaking should be free and being able to learn that should be a free. It's a skill that everyone should be able to develop. And I want to thank you for your time and all the insight you provide today. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Just get out there and start talking, folks. That's it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you.